Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Troy Vincent here. All the things going on right now, the world seems a little crazy, and people are so concerned with justice, but I really don't. I really don't buy that. I don't think they're really concerned with justice. I'll tell you something. I'll tell you a story. Um, Something that happened to me when I was a kid, and y'all probably already, if you've seen any of my other videos, and or you haven't, go back and watch some of the other ones before you watch this, because I'm going to kind of skip to something else that happened to me before what's in my other videos happened. In 1973, I don't know, Uncle, he was a little, I don't know, he was a little corrupt, I think, and they found him floating in the Ohio River. The story goes that some people think, that he was actually taken out by some corrupt, officials, that he was doing work for, and he slighted them, and so they decided that he was going to pay for what he did to them, and they supposedly shot him in his back. They tied him up, shot him in his back, and dropped him in the Ohio River. That's where his body was recovered from. I was 7 years old. Actually, not 7 yet when it first happened. I was 6, going on 7. I wasn't allowed to go to his funeral. That's one of my earliest memories, not allowed. And I didn't know at the time he was corrupt. He was one of my favorite uncles. So that's one of my earliest memories, is not being allowed to go to my uncle's funeral. Of course, for years I didn't really know what happened to him. I just knew he was gone, and I wasn't allowed to go to his funeral. And I didn't find out for years and years later all the stuff that he was involved in, and with some actual corrupt officials, we'll say. I'm not going to say where and when, but if you've seen my other videos, you can probably take a pretty good guess. That was 73. By 74, a certain movie producer found me through his cousin, of course, and then robbed me. And he had no remorse about, my life or my justice or what happened to me. And as a matter of fact, a year after that, I was in a foster home, because my parents were divorced later in 73. By 74, he robbed me, and then he had no... He didn't care at all. He just took what he wanted, made a promise to me, lied, and didn't keep the promise. So if anybody wants to talk about injustice, I've seen a lot of it. I've seen a lot of injustice. But I'm not out in the streets burning other people's businesses down, torturing people because of what George Lucas did. And, every time you guys go watch Star Wars, you're really, whether you know it or not, you're supporting a crook. You're supporting someone who stole from a child and has thought he can get away with it forever, and he's never going to get caught. And then even had the audacity to have this FBI agent come to my house in Bedford, Ohio, figure out, I don't know if he was tapping my phones, but I had talked to 2 people on the phone. Like I said, I've said in other videos, my 2 brothers, about going to get my evidence and getting it and mailing it to me, and they didn't do it. And all of a sudden, my whole sleeve disappears out of my mother's stuff. She had it in storage, and because she had moved from her house. A long story, I'm not getting into that, but all 3 of me and my brothers had our own little document sleeve, and I've showed it in other videos. I'll show you a quick picture of it here. But I took this piece of paper, I wrote Jedi Knights of the Force on in 1974. That's 3 years before Star Wars came out. And then by that time, we moved to West Palm Beach, Florida. We stayed there for a few months. And we ended up back in Louisville before 74 was up. And by 75, we were in a foster home. So Mr. Lucas had no remorse, or no I don't know how you would really say that. He didn't really care. He didn't have any empathy or sympathy for a very person he had stole something from. Of course, at that point, That was 75. He didn't know how successful it would be. And by 77, of course, when he released Star Wars, I'm sure he did, but he's probably figuring he's going to get away with it, and he don't have to say nothing to anyone. So, whether you believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, here, and this is again, I'm going to leave you with one little fact here. You can take it whichever way you want. I've never seen Justice, and that's not just me saying it. It's just true. I've never seen Justice, and my uncle, like I said, they just said he drowned, which wasn't true. The paper even said it, and the coroner who talked to my grandmother said something different. So I think there were certain forces there that were keeping that whole thing on a down low, and if it's true, then there were some corrupt police officers involved in his death in Louisville in 1973. And just like it's been said, that it doesn't matter. I know he may have been corrupt, but that doesn't give someone the right to kill him. So again, I didn't see justice there. Not to mention that I was burned when I was a kid, so I had to go through my parents being burned, my parents' divorce, moving all over the country, being robbed by George, put in a foster home, and that's only the beginning. I had a lot more after we got out of the foster home, so our lives were not good. And the reason why I forgot about Jedi Knights in the Force from 1974 all the way till 77 when I've seen the movie, and then again from that point I mentioned it to my father in the movie theater, and then I never remembered it again until 1999, 22 years later. Then when I started trying to write George, he tried to have me put in jail, which I never really threatened him, so they couldn't do it, and the police suggested I get a lawyer. So, believe what you want. Also, by 74 again, I was robbed by George Lucas, and then by 75, I was in a foster home. My father fought, and he finally got us out, and my father was the one who taught us to, have a respect for ourselves and others, and to work. And my mother and father were like polar opposites. She was about freedom, and so it was really kind of a good thing, because I learned a balance between too much left, too much right. I mean, there is a balance there, and you can just choose to ignore it, or you can live your life on the extremes. And I tried not to do that. I've tried to work, and everything I've ever had in my life I worked for. So again, the thing I'm going to leave you with is, whether you believe the truth or not, I'm telling it to you right now. I'm telling you the truth. So you can go watch Star Wars movies and pay that crook to see them, but in the end, you're going to have to explain to God why you did it when you knew the truth. Because, like I said, it doesn't matter if you believe it. That's irrelevant to the fact that it is true. And He knows it, I know it, and God knows it. And you're going to have to answer for doing what I told you was wrong. Because you are doing something that's wrong. George Lucas is corrupt. Star Wars is corrupt. And Disney has no remorse about it either. I tried to tell them years ago, right when they were buying it from me. I don't know if I really caught them before they already did, or it was after the fact. So I really don't know when their deal was signed. I never really looked into it. I don't care. But they obviously don't really care. And they are not for children, as you all think. They aren't. Look at every child star that comes out of Disney. They end up corrupt, on drugs, all kinds of crazy stuff. They're not. Disney is not good. And here I grew up on them. I thought they were great. I had all the little Disney movies, Pocahontas and Sleeping Beauty and so forth. Cinderella. They're not good. They're not good. Whether they started out good or not, that's irrelevant. Again, they're not now. So they're terrible. And so is George Lucas. You watch them, you'll pay for it. Okay? I'm just telling you. I'm not being mean. I'm just saying. You know the truth, and you're ignoring it if you think they're okay.